Now I can officially welcome you to the second day of the Claremont Eco Forum. It doesn't exist if it's not being recorded, I guess. So it's wonderful to have you here. Yesterday, we had a great time talking about sort of the inner transformation that's so vital to creating a more sustainable and equitable world. And today, we have the chance to sort of continue that conversation, but also to approach it from a perspective of transforming the sort of various systems and structures of society, of the way that human life is organized. So certainly not separate from or disconnected from the internal transformation, but something also distinct. Before we jump into our 90-minute panel conversation, which will then be followed by a wonderful musical performance from a US-based bluegrass group, and then we have then we'll take a small break and then come back for a small group conversation. And if our group is small enough, we might just do a group conversation to dive even deeper into these important issues of transformation for an ecological civilization. Before I hand it over to our moderator today, Dr. Philip Clayton, I've got a wonderful introductory video to share with you, sort of introducing the forum. It's just a few minutes long. It should be good.
Welcome to the 16th Claremont International Forum on Ecological Civilization and the 5th Youth Forum on Ecological Civilization. The Claremont Eco Forum is a prestigious annual event that began in 2006. It stands as the earliest and largest forum dedicated to ecological civilization in the Western world. Our mission is to gather innovative academics, nonprofit leaders, prominent activists, and governmental officials from both China and other nations. Together, we aim to explore new worldviews, modes of thinking, developmental models, approaches to organic farming, and educational paradigms in the pursuit of transitioning towards an ecological civilization. Over the years, thousands of individuals from around the globe have participated in these forums, fostering a significant impact. Media's coverage, such as People's Daily, Xinhua News, International Daily, and Snow U.S. Times, has helped to disseminate the forum's objectives. Notably, the 15th Claremont Eco Forum in 2022 reached approximately 12 million views, particularly in China, through various traditional and social media channels. The Claremont Eco Forum was initially organized by the Institute for Postmodern Development of China, IPDC, and the Center for Process Studies, CPS. In recent years, it has gradually received co-sponsorship from esteemed organizations such as the Cobb Institute, CI, the Institute for Ecological Civilization, EcoCiv, the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, the Budapest Center for Long-Term Sustainability, Hungary, the Overseas Chinese Environmental Engineers and Scientists Association, and the Chinese Ecological Civilization, Research and Promotion Association, among others. We extend a warm welcome to all participants and hope you thoroughly enjoy the forum. May the 16th Claremont Ecological Forum be a resounding success.
Woohoo! All right. So now we have a sense of what we're doing and how we got here over the last 16 years. And with that, I turn it over to our moderator, Philip Clayton, who is a scholar and activist, founder and president of the Institute for Ecological Civilization, EcoCiv, which seems an appropriate person to be involved in an international forum on ecological civilization. So, Philip, take it away.
Thank you, Andrew, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to day 2 of this 16th annual Eco Forum. Today's topic is transforming society We build on the discussions yesterday of transforming self, and we look forward tomorrow to the topic transforming the future. For today, we focus in on a number of questions about what it means to transform society and how that might be possible. We have 4 prestigious panelists joining us today, and I will ask them to briefly introduce themselves just in a couple of sentences, their name, their occupation, the emphasis of their work, and then we will dive immediately into the questions. May I begin by inviting you, Violeta, to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you very much, Philip. And it's a real honor and pleasure to be, for the first time, active participant of this summit. And I hope it's not the last time. So, well, what shall I tell that is relevant for this particular session? Very quickly about my career. I started in Silicon Valley working for a global corporation, then moved back to Europe. I'm originally from Slovenia, working for domestic corporation. Became an entrepreneur for 14 years because I hit the glass ceiling and I decided I was too young to make too many compromises. So I loved my entrepreneurial world, but then I got very unsatisfied the way how my taxes were used, so I became a politician. Vortex took over and I was deputy prime minister of Slovenia, but very shortly, because then again, due to some certain circumstances, became a European Commissioner for Transport, and I loved the job. And the discussions we're going to have today, without that job, I would not be able to credibly really speak to you, because without a big vision, which we will probably, and big understanding of the big picture, it's really hard to argue for a local priorities.
Thank you, Violeta. And may I ask Helena to briefly introduce herself?
Well, it's very appropriate that you ended with the local. I have been promoting a shift away from the globalizing economic path towards supporting local economies worldwide for the last 45 years. And it's based on experiences in traditional ancient cultures like Ladakh, Bhutan, and in contact with many others, as well as growing up in Sweden and seeing that even the successful industrial economy in Scandinavia was destructive environmentally and socially. So I'm a proponent of the urgent need for economic decentralization, but we need international collaboration to achieve that. We need to strengthen the government fabric vis-a-vis global banking and corporations, but we also need to deregulate local economic activity, particularly when it comes to primary production, food, farming, fisheries, forestry. All of these activities need to be deindustrialized immediately if we want to preserve biodiversity, if we want to survive. So that's my perspective, and I've been working on this for, actually 50 years now.
Thank you also for giving us a sense of the heart of your work, as Violeta has done as well. May I invite Alexander to introduce himself?
Nice to see you all. It's an honor for me to participate in this meeting, and it's a pity and shame for me to understand that I didn't know about this global event until recent, and I wasn't invited to take part due to some qualities I understand. Though I don't understand myself as an expert in many things involved in ecological movement, since I'm more an expert in the human psyche. I'm a psychiatrist, but a strange psychiatrist who came to understand that human psyche depends on the environment, and so I started to develop therapeutic approach based on human connection with the natural environment. I'm also an expert in art therapy or expressive therapy for many years. I'm a chair of the Russian Art Therapy Association. So I came to ecotherapy through art or expressive therapies. And my preoccupation is how we can support mental health, human health through human involvement in the environment. But we can do that in different ways. So I use the arts as the main media through which we can support this interaction.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Alexander. And finally, Attila, can you just tell us about your position and work?
Yeah, I am a research president of Budapest Center for Long-Term Sustainability. We are working in transforming our way of thinking in a way that is helpful for long-term sustainable future of humankind.
Beautifully put. We have prepared 15 questions for the 4 panelists. They are the most difficult questions we're aware of if one takes seriously the task to be involved in transforming society. What we would like to do is to name the questions. I'll start with Attila, who's just ended. And if each person will offer one dimension of their response to this question, we hope that between the 4 of us, something will emerge that has not been in our writings or our public lectures in the past. So this is a process of seeking an answer to questions that the world doesn't yet know the answer to. And we believe that these 4 experts who are on this panel will be able to lead you into new insights, both for understanding and for action. So Attila, I'll start with you. And after a minute or so, I'll just ask somebody else to jump in with their thoughts on the same question. Attila, can you name 1 or 2 important contemporary social movements? So we're focusing on naming a social movement that you believe is driving transformative change that is toward building an ecological civilization. Let's just take that one. Name the organization and its core strategy as it seeks to drive transformation.
If I may mention our own center, Budapest Center for Long-Term Sustainability, we realize that the primary thing to do is to revise our way of thinking, because long-term unsustainability is the result of human actions, and human actions are the result of our thinking, and the long-term effects are related to the way of thinking. And so something is wrong in our way of thinking, and it must be corrected in order to obtain sustainable development, beneficial for humanity and also for our home, for our planet. And our core strategy is that to revise our fundamental decision system. We are not aware that we have a fundamentally unified decision system which we receive or which is inborn or which is learned when we are very, very young, we are in early childhood, and then the social, the mindset of society becomes imprinted into our personality. We have also an inborn personality, and one or the other wins. And our future depends on which wins. So if the society has a mindset which is harmful for society and harmful for the environment, then we need to find it out what is our innate human nature. In other words, what is our innate human nature?
And let me invite Violeta in. again, what's a contemporary social movement, Violeta, that you would single out? And what's the strategy it engages in that you think might drive transformative change? So we're doing theory, but we're doing action in this session as well.
You're asking me? I'm sorry.
Yes,
I
please,
missed.
Violeta.
Connection was a bit weak. Okay, I was thinking about it while a colleague was talking, and I would pick two. First one, indigenous rights movement, because I feel that we are in sincere need for cross-civilizational wisdom integration. Every civilization so far has destroyed pretty much everything it could about the previous one, just to show its supremacy. So I do believe that now we are in the moment when we can start appreciating, cross-civilizational wisdoms. The second one I would pick is the women's rights movement. And the reason why I picked that is because we need society at the table. For some reason, for way too long, in the entire industrial revolution sets, we depended too much on a male type of vision of the world. Nothing wrong with it. I have a great respect for men, but it's only half. So bringing women at the table and really start thinking as a society, that gives me a great hope for us.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that really clear answer. I invite Helena in, a transformative movement, and what's the strategy that's effective?
Well, I'm, of course, a proponent of a localization movement worldwide. And from our perspective, it consists of not exactly the women's rights movement or even the indigenous rights movement, but a very clear cultural turning towards an appreciation of the wisdom of indigenous cultures, the wisdom of the feminine, and a huge and rapid realization that we need to respect and value that turning, which in turn is related to experiential knowledge, respect for that. Right brain, we're now hearing from wise voices about the differences between left and right brain. I see movements like the permaculture movement, the transition town movement, the eco-village movement, and particularly worldwide local food initiatives and other countless initiatives for strengthening the local economy, local knowledge systems, all pointing in the same direction. And our work in Local Futures is to try to help to bring them together so that together they constitute this U-turn towards a deep respect for the diversity of life, a respect that makes us more humble, and that is essential if we want to survive. We can continue down this patriarchal, monocultural, top-down path for a little while longer, but every day we're going to wake up more and more to the fact that it simply cannot work.
That's fascinating. Both of your major emphases match with the two emphases of Violeta's answer. It's interesting coherence. I'm hearing a gender difference, maybe. Alexander, what is a social movement you would highlight? What are its methods?
I believe in the power of the arts, so I recognize the vital role of the so-called ecological art movement. It was a tiny segment of the contemporary art 20 years ago, but it assumes more and more significant position now. And so I believe that arts can reach a human psyche, human heart, rather than, or not only human minds. So I believe in the transforming, the healing power of the arts. And I base my activities as a mental health specialist whose specialization is expressive arts on the use of ecological or environmental arts.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And complementary, I think, to the themes that Violeta and Helena both emphasized. I want to ask this third question.
Point out
Go ahead, Helena, please.
Yeah, again, the reawakening to the need to respect the right side of the brain is very much connected to the arts as well.
Yes, yes. I want to go to the third question that we talked about in advance, because I find it one of the most difficult ones. And I'll let anyone jump in who would like to start. There are always trade-offs between economic growth and the transition to a genuinely ecological civilization. I want to know what adjustments to the current economic system, what specific adjustments to the current economic system do you advocate for? And if any, what positive roles can business play in the transition? Anyone who'd like to jump in?
Well, I'm happy to jump in. I would argue that we have to start by looking at what we mean by economic growth. We have to understand that one of the most important messages today is that growth is making the majority of people poorer. And that means an honest accounting. That means looking at how many hours, how many days per year you have to work to put roof over your head, food on the table. We are being misled because we blindly, I don't think people are misleading consciously, but there's an urgent need to wake up to the assumptions that are part of this global economic system. So growth is not actually meaning in improvement, even material improvement for the majority. The myth that people are wanting to buy more gadgets, more cars, and that they are pressuring leaders in this direction is wrong. It has been studied, it's been explained. So what I find so wonderfully empowering is to see that when you turn towards strengthening the local economy, you can actually simultaneously increase biodiversity, reduce pollution, and increase material well-being for people, while allowing for essentially fewer hours of work. But this means moving outside of the mechanistic industrial paradigm. It means moving towards a truly ecological paradigm where we are looking at wealth and growth in terms of the growth of the actual natural resources that we depend on. We're not looking at this man-made techno-economic infrastructure, which is treated as though it's the real world. No, it's a fairy tale for a few men that are still pushing us in that direction. And I believe that the main reason why we're continuing down that way is because, as Attila was saying, we need to really encourage a worldview shift, a big picture shift, where we look honestly at that techno-economic fairy tale, which is now trying to tell us that we don't need to age, we don't need to die, and taking us into a metaverse away from the real world.
Attila, you were mentioned. Do you want to talk a little bit about this tension between the economic growth machine and the transition? Is there a middle way? Do we dive all the way to an opposite extreme? How do you conceptualize that?
Are you asking me?
No, I was asking Attila.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I would mention Ernst Schumacher's book, The Small is Beautiful, and he was contrasting mainstream economics with the Buddhist economics. And in Burma, it is the first principle of Buddhist economics is we Burmese have a sacred duty to conform both our dreams and our acts to our face. This we shall ever do. So if I would like to add my formulation, then I would say we have a primary duty to conform our dreams and acts according to our deepest, most realistic convictions about the nature of life, the nature of man, and the nature of the world, and to base our economic goals on these convictions. And we have a lot of things to learn and relearn from ancient traditions as well, which we not understand well enough to base our real practice, a new economics on that, because we have to learn a lot of things on which we are working on, what kind of things we should understand better in order to have a better practice.
Yeah, nicely put. Can I ask anyone on the panel, does anyone think there is anything positive about the current economic system, or does it just need to be absolutely destroyed and rebuilt from the ground up? I hear so far of strong opposition between the present and the future that you look toward. But Violeta, Alexander, others?
Okay, I have one proposition, which will be in two parts. First of all, if you allow me to go back to the roots, I think there is, of course, lots of good in the current system if we look at it as a result of an era, as an end of an era. I mean, in 400 years of industrial revolutions, we learned a lot and we've progressed quite a bit, but we caused a lot of damages well along the way because there was a lack of responsibility. Somehow in this formula, there was no responsibility. So growth itself cannot sustain. You know, there has to be a combination of different elements. And let me share what currently I see as a promising value add to what we've created so far. We have three promising economical models that we should learn from. One is the donut economy, which assumes and actually invites us to understand that the Earth has a limited level of resources. The second one is circular economy, which is asking us to see the system as a circular system, but that's not enough. Regenerative economy also is reminding us that we have to take care of land, water, air. And these are elements that we can constantly refresh, regenerate. And only when you put all these three together, and this is a system view that is missing right now, and nobody has implemented it yet, you see that something very promising is emerging. And there is the sparkle, the universal sparkle that needs to be added to this, which is constant learning about new. So at every phase of the development, we have to take stocks and see which is the fourth, the fifth, what needs to be, a system needs to be added, what needs to be taken away. So really put the entire humanity along with the natural world into dynamic system stage. We are so static, and because we are trapped in such static systems, we cannot adjust and we cannot even implement responsibility fast enough, even if we get aware of it. So I think system approach can offer some very reliable sort of tools where we could start looking at everything from a bigger perspective and really take a bigger view and then go down. And this globalization, local authenticity is enriching the pool of diversity, but then global view really can bring us together in collaborative networks. And then I can see a hopeful.
Can I pick up on your very last comment, Violeta? It mirrors something that Professor Jay McDaniel just said in the chat. He's trying to bring together the local and the global, as you just did in this word, glocal, in a way that doesn't just emphasize the local and not include the global anymore. And I want to ask the panel, is there a both and solution, as Professor McDaniel says, thinking in ways that combine global awareness with local loyalty? Any panel members? Alexander, Attila?
Richard, maybe first.
Yes,
Richard
please.
Page.
Yes, please. The Belgian economist Bernard Letaier had proposed that we needed both a yin and a yang economy, a gift economy within a community, and a yang economy to import those products we could not produce within the smaller circle. So it's a combination using the distributive power of a current system, as I understand it. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Attila.
Challenge one word.
Sorry, I saw Attila's hand. Next, Attila.
May I tell a short sentence? So I think that in a comprehensive perspective, what we see is that life is cosmic and the universe is living, and life is organized in 7 fundamental levels. One is the level of cells, the second is individuals, the third is family, The fourth is nation. The fifth is humanity, mankind, humankind. The sixth is the biosphere, Gaia. And the seventh is the universe itself, the living universe. And these 7 levels are forming a unified whole, so it must be in harmony. So local and global are all in actual reality, they form one causal system, and we have to understand the nature of causality in this living community of life.
Anyone want to add to that? Violeta, you were going to jump in, I think.
Just really sorry, very quickly. I like the comment that Jay made, but this kind of loyalty is scary because it requires obedience. And that's the last thing we need today. We need engagement. We need a real active engagement and collaboration. And I would definitely invite that we move away and change the language from loyalty to active participation and engagement.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Helena, you were also trying to jump in. We've got lots of energy on this panel.
Yeah, I think we need to distinguish between the global truth of a Gaian ecosystem that is one, that is absolutely one, that is global, and a man-made system, which Violeta, you were saying before, it somehow became unaccountable. This global system from the outset was unaccountable because it started from Europe with the help of Christianity that actually spread a monoculture that opened the doors for a trading system that later came in with genocide, slavery, later on colonialism, and closures in Europe. Now that top-down global man-made system was certainly unaccountable. And what we need to recognize is that the foundational structures of that have continued to accelerate. But after the Second World War, it was thought that we needed to integrate economic activity. There has been a huge amount of good intention going into allowing global trade in finance and goods to dominate. What does that mean? It means that our governments have rolled out the red carpet for global banks and corporations. In 2008, we learned they're too big to fail now. I would argue that this is one of the most important truths that we need to look at. If we keep avoiding looking honestly at what global trade means when it's in the hands of banks and corporations that use algorithms to strengthen their extractive capitalism. If we think of capitalism as allowing for a diversity of wealth creation, if we think of having some interest allowed, I'm a capitalist. I do not want to impose a government structure that prevents creative, genuine entrepreneurship. But I really believe we must distinguish between what we have now, which is monopolies that do not pay tax, have no regulations, and that are giving our governments their marching orders. And the fact that at the local and national level, all of us are subjected to heavier and heavier bureaucracy, blind, stupid bureaucracy, and heavy taxation. We need to look at that economic truth, which the donut economy doesn't do, which most of the examples you gave, I think, are afraid to look at that truth. I want to say one thing more, which is I am not advocating for this system being completely destroyed. I see a perfectly calm transition possible if governments are empowered to regulate new trade treaties in which a democratic voice determines the shape of business at the global level and even at the local level. If we have a democratic process to look at the realities, I think we can support a transition that is peaceful, that does not mean, that means so much less hardship than what we're going to face if we continue blindly in the same direction.
Okay, thank you, Helena, for that very strong statement. I want to ask the panel about technology. Some people think that technology is intrinsically negative. Others think that technological advancements like renewable energy, circular economy models, smart infrastructure, and so forth can actually accelerate the transformation toward an ecological civilization. What is your view? Alexander, you haven't spoken for a while, I think.
Oh,
you have a wish to say something?
again, I would comment on this topic from the perspective of expressive arts. Since it is more and more influenced by technology, in particular by so-called digital art. And digital art is a reality, a language used by so many contemporary artists and therapists. We cannot provide our support to millions of people now without technology such as Zoom meetings and so on. It could be unrealistic to stop to use all these achievements. But I understand at the same time that we cannot rely on this means only in providing our support to those people, but because they need a special environment that is created through our human presence and through the presence of many other components of the so-called ecosystem of intersubjective communication. We need not only technology, but our emotional involvement, empathy, and many other things that are created not through technology, but through our hearts, minds, and souls.
Let's see if Violeta or Attila want to say anything about if technology is just universally negative, or if it plays some role in the transition as you conceive it.
Attila, go ahead.
I think that technology in itself is spreads materialism, because technology is it produces physical objects, and without working out the culture or its meaning for human well-being, so the distance between the usage of technology and the proper usage of technology towards human and general well-being, the distance between these two kinds of well-being increases exponentially. And so it means that technology has an inborn danger, and we need a culture first, and after should be introduced technology. And the other aspect is
that's an important point. So we need the culture, the transition culture first, and after that, and within those parameters, technology can be introduced.
That's right.
That's a very important thesis. Violet, I saw you nodding, so I just
I mean, that's a good. I got to say that I'm a computer engineer by profession, so it's going to be a bit biased here. But when I started studying, and that's been way back, I got very excited about technology, especially about the internet and all the options that global connectivity gave us, for one particular reason, that humanity will finally realize how much we know, how much is happening around the world, and that we will understand how little we humans have evolved so far. So I still believe so. I mean, I'm leading a global movement, and the way how we learn now, we use technology. Of course, we are today discussing this because of technology, and we use it. But the emerging knowledge, from all parts of the world that has happened in the last few years is simply amazing. And now I understand, and I can explain to students why smart cities and smart villages, they have nothing to do with technology. They have to do a lot with the wisdom and knowledge and understanding complexity of systems we are in, including the nature 1, nature 2, and nature 3. And all three natures will coexist. So authentic nature 1 to the planet Earth, cities and villages that are part of urbanization and man-made, and nature 3, which is a virtual world which will stay to exist. But because humans are nature, all that is nature too.
Yeah,
So
nice.
it is again a matter of responsibility. It's a matter of awareness and waking up and understanding that 100 years matter to think ahead, 1,000 years matter to think ahead, not just 1 hour.
Very beautiful. By the way, I want to point out to everybody that in the chat, there's an interesting discussion going on between Violeta, Jay McDaniel, and others about this word loyalty. And you might want to add more comments into the chat. I want to point out, Richard Page says, well, after all, technology is connecting us on this Zoom. 5 different countries just on the panel, and many other countries represented in the audience together here. I'd like to make a big shift now in our discussion and invite each panelist to mention just one grassroots movement that you think is effective in driving change toward environmental sustainability by name, and then what is it doing? Just give us one thing it's doing that you think singles it out. Let's get those 4 on the table very quickly, and then I'll have a follow-up question to all of you. Helena, what would you single out? One grassroots movement and why it's effective?
For me, permaculture.
Ah,
I think it's effective because it engages human beings on a human scale to relate to the diversity of the living earth. The initial conception was not so respectful of diversity, but the movement has become an adaptation to diversity and is providing inspiration and hands-on deep engagement with the living earth in a very productive way.
excellent. Let's get the other 3 on the table and then see what you all as a panel want to do with them. Alexander, one grassroots movement?
Perhaps it's a so-called shamanic tradition. And I know that some of my colleagues in the area of expressive arts are profoundly interested in bringing the shamanic knowledge and into the expressive arts. And
Great example. Let's just get the other 2 on the table, and then I'm going to ask you what's similar and what's different between them. And just to see where we go with this. Attila?
I would connect with Alexander and mentioning eco-animism.
Eco-animism
is the ancient religion of humanity, and we don't understand it clearly. It is not only a belief, but a knowledge, a natural knowledge, which is primary interest for long-term sustainability.
Fantastic. And Violeta, which 4th would you put on the table?
Eco-civilization movements, because they expand our consciousness and allow us to see that there is something beyond the systems that we are currently in. Just this inspiration and invitation to imagine the world where we would like to live, and then also imagine the path there. That's what humans need. We need aspirational goals.
Fantastic. So you have put these 4 examples on the table of grassroots movements that are driving change. And so to any panel member, what is it they share in common that makes them effective? Or is there, having heard the 4th, a 5th one that would add more to this picture? I think the audience will learn from watching you listen to the 4 examples together and respond to them. Anyone?
I think it is very important.
Sorry?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Attila, and then Helena.
They all
No,
share.
who began first? Attila, you began, right?
Yep.
Just a 1 sentence, and then Helena's next.
Okay. So I think that it is, we are all personally interested in living our life according to the best of our nature. And so understanding the nature of life and understanding the nature of human beings is of primary and personal interest for all of us, and it connects us to each other.
Beautiful. Helena?
I think that's true what you said, Attila, but I don't think that those 4 movements are all dealing with understanding human nature. But I think they're all about returning to and understanding the need to respect nature, the living world, Mother Gaia.
Others, common features among your examples, or another example you would introduce? We're talking about transforming society, and you are able to tell us of movements that are playing, grassroots movements that are playing that function. So I want to leave the mic open first for Violeta or Alexander, and then others that might you want to add.
Well, I felt rather opposite what Helen just said. I feel that all four movements are connecting the past with the future, and they're offering some sort of transition as well when we talk. And regenerative, I would add, is the fifth one, which is also very applicable in this sense. So I hear that from all four of us, I've heard that we mentioned something that is taking us back to nature, because in the old cultures, they were very much connected to the nature one. And we lost in the industrial age a connection with nature ourselves and with each other. But these four movements, I feel that actually bringing us back to the relationships that matter.
Nice. Any final comments on this one?
Yes, I understand that all the above mentioned grassroots movements are united in their understanding of the nature of human psyche as connected with the psyche of the living world around us, and that we are subjects among the bigger community of subjects, and whom we are invited to create our sustainable system of relationships.
Very nice point. Thank you, Alexander. I'd like to move to question 7. I love the concreteness of the discussion. You're getting at the biggest issues of transforming society, but you're getting there with a concreteness out of your knowledge and your activism that I think is really helpful for the audience. So I want to continue that theme by asking you to mention one strategy for raising public awareness and engagement, the transition of society toward an ecological mindset. One strategy. So many of us are frustrated that the wealthy publics in the global north seem not to be becoming engaged in transforming. And tell us one strategy that you believe can be scaled up to help create meaningful change of society. Anyone? Violeta, was that a hand?
Yeah, I mean, I can check. If I need to contribute one, I will vote for something I used as a politician and I use a lot now as a movement curator. It's full grassroots participation, art of hosting techniques that help us to really engage collaborative networks, and then use technology to help us to make these ideas transparent and to allow people to co-create the emergence of those that need to be done now, tomorrow, or kept in a big vision in order to be as a guiding principle. So active participation, full engagement, participatory modeling, art of hosting, which is all the same thing.
Nice. Others, ideas that come to your mind, Helena?
Well, for me, it's addressing the fact that the majority of humanity is having to struggle to just put food on the table and a roof over their head. And we're talking about the middle classes now in the successful industrial economies, US, UK, Scandinavia. So I think putting that as part of a systemic picture, the big picture that looks at that human cost and the ecological, and shows that the destructive path is destroying both people and their livelihoods as well as the natural world, that there is a U-turn that can be made towards respecting diversity. It has essential characteristics of respecting diversity, which means decentralization or localization in terms of economic adaptation to diverse climates and ecosystems, cultures, knowledge system. It needs international collaboration, but let's not confuse international collaboration with the international economic system of global banks and corporations. I feel clarity and a big picture that shows clearly this human cost linked to the ecological cost, and that shows that there is a way forward that could be relatively painless and peaceful if the majority wake up. So yes, we want as much participation as possible. I think we need to use films and other ways of disseminating the big picture in an activist manner.
That's a beautiful response, Helena. Thank you. Anyone else on this question before we move on?
The perennial strategy that I believe in and materialize it through my therapeutic practices is that when we take care of the environment and empathize different forms of life, we bring more health and beauty and sustainability in our private world and different systems that we belong to, our families, our communities. This is the universal principle that we can use in different segments of our life, in mental health area in particular.
Nice. I want to make sure that everyone saw the suggestion of the book by Anand from Clarissa Douglas in the chat. That's a link that that could be very valuable. How about entrepreneurship? Can entrepreneurship contribute to the transformation of society towards sustainable and regenerative practices? What's the role of entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, environmental entrepreneurs? Any thoughts or examples?
Maybe I can be a bit provocative. Entrepreneurs disturb systems. They are absolutely needed because they challenge the boundaries all the time. They look for new opportunities and they are willing to change. Big systems are very reluctant. So they need a challenge, and entrepreneurs give that. Without that, there would be no transformation. So that's why it's essential that we include them in every kind of modeling and especially financing. Right now, they are very much hungry for acknowledgement and active support in order to be able to massively contribute what needs to be done. And without social transformation, without new structures within which we can deliver green agendas and closer and return back to collaboration with the laws of nature and the planet, we won't be able to do it. Right now, there is so many fantastic initiatives in the world, but they get killed in the old structures. They get killed as soon as they try to deliver something good. So that's why we need social entrepreneurs, that they can help us to restructure the way how we function, the way how we are organized. Can we move away from states to be organized like in a forum of investments, economy, education? These are all functions. I mean, they have nothing to do with really real life. They should be a dynamic systems that they are readjusting to the real needs of people, but they don't. We squeeze people in them. And of course, we destroy a lot of beauty that humanity has. So yes, social entrepreneurship, and yes, they need financing. They need access to resources in order to deliver what they can deliver.
Okay, so very positive response from Violeta on the role of social entrepreneurs. Did the other three of you agree, or any questions? Examples?
I worry that there's not enough of a distinction between the entrepreneurship, which supports what Violeta calls the old system. Unfortunately, it's not old, it's still alive, it's very strong, and it tends to squash the sort of wonderful initiatives that we all would support. And so that's what we see in the localization movement, these smaller human scale, genuinely creative entrepreneurial efforts that bring about enormous benefits are often squashed, both by these blind, stupid regulations at the local level and by the heavy weight of money that and the giant corporations that are subsidized, that come in and deliver food from the other side of the world at half the price of local food, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to distinguish between the entrepreneurship, which is promoted by big business and which tends to be part of the very top-down, monocultural, destructive system, and the really creative work that is respectful of the living diversity of cultures and ecosystems.
That's a fantastic distinction, Helena. How can we encourage the type of social entrepreneur that Violeta identifies and avoid the kind of entrepreneur of the current system, the one driven by, as in question 10, vested interests, resistance to change, the current system, that's their own striving for wealth without equity? There we see the two sides, the good and the evil, as it were, but how to encourage the one and limit the damage of the other is one of humanity's greatest questions today, no?
New metrics.
New metrics, say more, Violeta.
The new criteria by which we evaluate what is good and what is bad. I mean, right now, you know, in order to get finances, these are just really old economy criteria. And they don't look at the social impact. They don't look at responsible behavior. They don't look at the long-term consequences. They don't look about the positive social impact. So these are, we know that. We all know that. But in order to really make it happen, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a massive participation and events like this that open up our minds and start little by little really emphasizing the change that needs, and stay by the change. We gotta be the change we're talking about. And you know, there is this number of people is growing. It really is, even though I don't think that the current system can be changed. I think the current system is collapsing and we just need to start growing something that is much better.
So Violeta says, if we measure the social goods of these social entrepreneurs, we can bring more attention and maybe more space for them to bring about change.
But not
are there
only
other ways? I think you guys are right that entrepreneurs are systems changers in the best sense. How can we encourage the kind of entrepreneurship, say, toward localism, as Helena has spent her life devoted? What are the ideas that can let these transformative agents have the impact that they deserve to have? Any ideas?
As far as I know, some effective ranking systems are being implemented in the business at the moment. In particular, a so-called ESG ranking system that measures the three parameters of a business in businesses, such as ecology, social responsibility, and the quality of management. And as a result of implementing these ranking systems, companies can gain more advantages in comparison to other companies in gaining more access to global market in particular. I mentioned about this ranking system, taking into account some facts that concern some leading companies in Russian Federation in the last few years. Such as, for instance, such as Lukoil, for instance, and they are more and more dependent on such ranking system. I don't know how a large scale is this implementation at the moment, but it's one of the examples how business can respond to this system of international regulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before Helena and Attila's responses, I want to make sure everyone sees the comment by Kurt Kruger in the chat. He has a beautiful description of imaginal cells or imaginal cells in the transformation of the caterpillar to the butterfly. This is a concept put forward by a book with that title, Imaginal Cells, by Tim Pullman, and rebootthefuture.org, a UK-based nonprofit. Helena.
Well, again, I think if we understand the vital importance of proximity, of experiential knowledge, we'll be looking at the fact that right now there are creative ways being implemented around the world, but they're at a human scale, where local investors meet new entrepreneurs who want to do something that is clearly beneficial for the community, for the environment. So it's already happening, but it's not going to be one system imposed on the entire planet. There is a huge amount of diversity, and key is small is beautiful, human scale, more intimate knowledge. This is what localization is all about. It's fundamentally about waking up to the complexity, the diversity, the constant process of change, and the interconnected web of the dance of life. That needs to be comprehended through deeper experiential knowledge. Yes, we are sharing knowledge now across the web here. It's useful, but in actual fact, to build the structures we need to be turning to the local. In order to transform a global system, man-made system, we urgently need to collaborate and use these tools that have been created by this global system. But there's a lot more to say about it. But anyway, right now, these ways of supporting those entrepreneurs are being created at the local level. And it's the localization movement, it's the bottom-up movement that is having an impact in all, meeting all basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, and also in finance.
Yeah.
Creative ways of creating the finance needed to build those structures that we need.
Yeah, it's the first time I've heard you fit the role of entrepreneurs into the localism movement. I think this is a new insight that the four of you have come up with. That's important. People haven't seen the two types of entrepreneurs that Violeta first introduced. But let me just see if Attila wants to comment, and then I want to take you to a couple of very specific questions before we move to our closing few minutes. Attila, did you want to comment on this one?
Yeah, I think that the main problem is much more deep than than most people realize until now. And this is that the fundamental problem is how to live our life. And to understand this, we must realize that before the modern civilization, all traditional societies was living in the cosmic context, in the cosmic relations, in the cosmic causal system of life and mind. And it is, Helena mentioned before, the intertwined structure of life and the significance of experiential knowledge to realize this intertwining. But I think it is obscure, and it is we don't really understand. We can feel, we can develop an empathy towards experiential knowledge, but it is very fundamental to understand it theoretically, because we need conscious decisions and responsibility. We can be responsible only if we understand what this whole thing is about. And so we have to understand the nature of life and the nature of the universe and the nature of this cosmic causal relationship.
Beautiful. I want to point out that Spencer Ward in the chat quotes from the first paragraph of Marx's Kapital, Band 1, Volume 1. Beautiful. The revolutionary subject is richness, the absolute working out of our creative potentiality. Beautiful contribution to the discussion. So 2 very specific questions, and then we'll conclude with your big picture vision for transformation of society. This is question 11. In your view, how can urban planning and design, so we really want you to talk about details of urban planning from your perspective, how we can reimagine urban planning and design so that we create ecologically resilient cities and communities, ones that promote sustainable lifestyles and resource efficiency. Any concrete thoughts that you can offer the audience from your experience and study? Anyone?
The absolute need for decentralization. The dominant patriarchal system has been setting us on a course of continued urbanization into megalopolises. The 15-minute city and all of this, worryingly, is part of a system on automatic pilot, driving humanity away from farming, from meeting the community needs at the local and regional level. So the urban planning needs to start with the big picture of supporting smaller cities and towns, supporting the building up of the infrastructure of the life that is connected to the land around those cities. It's about shortening the distances between production and consumption. It starts with understanding the horrendous waste in the global system where food is imported and exported, the same product, beef in, beef out, milk in, milk out, send things to China to be processed from all around the world, send them back again. This is a criminal waste of resources. It is being carried out while we talk at the COPs about climate change. We talk about carbon. The emissions from this trade, this unnecessary, destructive trade, which is only there to make global corporations wealthier, is not even mentioned because the emissions from trade are not included in the climate negotiations, in any of the research. So we urgently need to have the truth about this and the link between globalization and corporate concentration, the link between localization and healthy, thriving cities, where the scale will vary from environment to environment, but we need to be ensuring that the smaller towns and villages can survive, and that farming, healthy farming, is allowed to flourish.
Good. Thank you. That's a beautiful framework for this. How concrete can you give us a suggestion, whether in a small town, a medium-sized town, or a large city, of what urban planning, what a sustainable, resilient city looks like? Can you describe one feature of it? Maybe begin with Alexander, the artist, because artists think concretely, and then I'll invite others. Something concrete that we can put a picture in our heads.
I remember in this context the idea, the project developed by Newton and Helen Harrison, one of the pioneers of eco art, starting their activities together in the 70s. Last century, and one of his last projects haven't materialized yet was so-called Helen's Town, and we published this project in our website in a web-based journal called Eco-Poesis, Eco-Humanitarian Practice, and you can read about this project in more detail. There.
Thanks.
It's wonderful. It's also has much in common with what Helena said about localization and small towns integrated into the environment and developing their sustainability based on nature and human community.
Any other concrete ideas of urban design from village to city? Concrete things that will help us picture. For example, Clarissa Douglas points out the importance of not separating more wealthy from less wealthy people, but that they coexist. They are in the same, walking in the same space, shopping in the same place, that can be transformative. Other concrete, and there are other beautiful, Celeste's possibility of hope reference, for example. Other things that you think of, Violeta?
Let me offer two very concrete, actually three, if I may. One is an initiative that is yet to really grow and deliver, but is from field to the spoon. So a really direct connection in the food flow from the field, which means locally supported food chains and networks. And that really keeps the food alive. And of course, that is by far better for our health than anything else. So that is very encouraging. And it's making a positive impact on schools, on kindergartens, because they are now developing their own small gardens. And they start to understand what it means to care. What it means to really connect with earth, with plants, what it means to grow, that you really have to take, care if you want something to grow. And then the joy of eating something that it's fresh and you took care of it. So, and that is also very well manifested in many cities already today. Especially for, I can speak of the cities here in my country, Slovenia, that every citizen has a little garden, either on a balcony or they are dedicated areas in the city or around the cities where citizens can have their own gardens. And it's not only to produce food, it's a great social meeting place. It's where people can connect to people. And as I said, this caring dimension of humanity is developed. And on a more administrative level, some project in the European Union launched urban sustainability planning projects where communities come together, municipalities come together, and they share experiences, how they plan in the spirit of sustainability. So this exchange of knowledge, the networks of knowledge exchange, have proved to be extremely valuable, especially understanding that one measure doesn't fit all. So you have to critically assess and understand why certain community decided to go one way or not the other. Then you can make good decisions for yourself as well, because the copying just doesn't work.
I love that idea of the gardens inside the city, so that the boundary between city and food growing is undercut, and that we live where we grow food. And the last concrete question before we move to closing, I'll give Attila the first chance because he didn't get to respond to the last one, is the question of policy intervention or legislative measures. What are some policy changes, some legislative actions that you think can help bring about this societal transformation toward an ecological civilization? Attila, if you want to, you get the first crack at it.
Yes, it is it is in the constitutions, in the preamble of constitutions of most countries. Well-being is a primary value, but what is well-being is a crucial question of development and of human life, and understanding well-being correctly is a huge task. And I developed a comprehensive approach based on comprehensive science, in which well-being is in actual reality has a comprehensive dimension. So in regarding all the 7 levels what I mentioned, from the cells to individual life and family life and national life and the life of humankind and the terrestrial life and cosmic life, these are all relations to these 7 levels of cosmic life is very fundamental to our real quality of life. So we should live in peace with life and the world, and we are not at in the present. We don't know what life is, what the world is, and so we have to learn before act. And I think sooner or later we have to learn what reality is, and comprehensive science has a lot of say about it.
Very good. Before I ask for other examples of policy change, I wanted to make sure everyone saw in the chat the contribution by Paloma Pavel and Richard Page from Villa El Salvador, outside Lima, Peru, which is a beautiful description of a different way of thinking of city altogether. And I'll let you read it for yourself. Other panelists who want to speak about the policy changes you think would be most important for transformation of society. Anyone?
I I would say again that I think using the mechanisms that governments use to steer the economy, taxes, subsidies, and regulations need to be employed to make this U-turn towards genuinely ecological ways of living. And that means away from supporting global corporations and banks towards supporting a multitude of decentralized structures. Fundamental to that would also be to stop subsidizing enterprise to employ more energy and technology and to supposedly remove labor and the need for human work. What this is doing is destroying an overabundant renewable resource, which is humanity. We are on a blind technological path where techno systems that serve the concentrations of wealth while destroying human creativity, real possibility for meaningful work, are continuing to escalate. The shift where businesses and government agencies would be encouraged to employ people first and reduce energy and resource consumption. This would transform the entire globe very rapidly.
Yeah.
It does mean that we recognize that the path towards AI, towards 5G, towards a smart city is absolutely the wrong way. And that is something that is going to need a bit of work to get that message out in a comprehensive way.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Let me just add one
Violeta,
more.
and then we'll move on to the last two
Very
questions.
short and sharp, because Helen really gave a big picture and really well described. But I would say policy interventions are a must. I don't think we can transition in anything without policy interventions. Just some good examples. From private mobility to public mobility would not happen without strong public interventions. And we see the countries that haven't done public interventions, policy interventions, they're not doing a good transition, or even to mobility as a service. For example, oil-based propulsion engines to green energy engines, they wouldn't happen really in a smooth way if there were no incentives, if there were not proper financial tools and mechanisms for it. Or for example, intervention related to air quality, road safety, food quality. They would never, people would not volunteer because the consciousness of people is lacking behind the technological development. It's lacking behind what technology does. So we need to have a collective, collaborative, and also the intervention subsystems that help us to deliver that.
Thank you. Let's go all the way back to question number 2. And because you're such an advanced panel, I have a very challenging task for you. I'd like to invite you to state your theory of systems change in just one sentence. So we'll listen to all 4 of the sentences and then open the door and let you comment on each other as we go. I've never asked a panel to do that before. It may be impossible, but whoever raises their hand first and wants to begin, what is your theory of how systems change, how society changes in just a single sentence? And then we'll talk about that.
I would say through a greater focus on a worldview shift. And that means an educational process of disseminating the big picture. Is what I call big picture activism.
So say the opening words, through a greater focus on
promoting a view of the big picture.
Okay. So worldview change, promoting a view of the big picture is the core of systems change for Helena. Other 3, what would you say?
Sustainability requires improving the well-being of human nature and the improving the well-being of environment. And this requires very solid knowledge. And so it requires a science which is a unified science of matter, life, and mind.
Oh, beautiful. But the core, the first part was improving the well-being of human nature and improving the well-being of
natural environment.
Natural environment. Okay, 2 more.
Okay, let me go next. Earth as an ecozone of the galaxy.
Oh, beautiful. Say it again. Earth as
ecozone of our galaxy.
an ecozone of our galaxy. Beautiful. And Alexander, in a sentence.
Everything is possible if we trust the natural process and believe in teleology of the world in which we are part of.
So addressing the natural environment and focusing on the teleology of the natural world.
Teleology
The
of
purposes,
the
that
world in
for
which
which
we
it
live
exists.
and part of which we are.
Beautiful, of which we are. Now, hearing what the four of you have just said, can you make an observation about, are these saying the same thing in different ways? Or are there disagreements? Help us understand what you just gave us. I think on the recording, it will be fascinating to pull out those phrases and put them in the notes for this public session. So do you hear resonance with what the others have said?
I feel aligned with all of them, and really just the different perspectives, some with a bigger zoom than the others, but yeah, I could.
Alexander's nodding also, so I think he agrees.
Yes, the idea of our uniqueness and our unique role in the history of the world, in the history of the life, in our human history, but this uniqueness is somehow related to universality of our nature.
Yeah, yeah. Attila, I want to make sure we don't lose the last phrase you said in your answer, which is we need a way of thinking that's broad enough to encompass all these pieces. You said you mentioned three in particular. I can't name them again. Your very last words was science.
Comprehensive science of matter, life, and mind.
That was it. A comprehensive science in the European the Wissenschaft sense, right? The Ciencia, the broader than the narrow word of science. Wissenschaft of nature, life, and mind?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys question 15. Just ask each person in closing to say how it's such a great question. I'll just let it stand as it is. Maybe I'll say the names and then I have a final question to answer in just one sentence. How can cultural norms, values, and practices be transformed to align with sustainable living and ecological responsibility? How can cultural norms, values, and practices be transformed to align with sustainable living and ecological responsibility? Attila, you just spoke, so let me ask you to give your closing thought first.
It is of central importance, the value systems of modernity, which puts the material well-being as the absolutely one and the primary and absolute winner. What we need is to make a comprehensive value system to have as a primary value life. We have to learn to understand what life is, but to put the value of life to the primary value of society and of social development. And the second is the value of mind or mental understanding. And the third is matter, which is a tool to help the other two.
Beautiful. Helena, how do we transform these things?
I think we need to look at the way that the dominant global economy is imposing a consumer monoculture worldwide, making children believe that the way to get what is their universal need, which is the universal need to be loved, in order to meet that need, they need the latest consumer gadget, they need the latest iPad. So what we have is a global commercial system perverting cultural norms and human values. So if we don't look at changing that dominant artificial culture, the consumer culture has been created from the top down. And that's what we need to focus on, much more importantly than changing cultural norms, plural. The real problem is the norm of this consumer culture imposed worldwide.
That's beautifully put, so concise and so compelling. Thank you, Helena. Alexander.
If we take cultural norms and values as a basis of our own existence, existence of our own bodies, of our own cells, of our hearts, we will see how effective and sustainable are all those cultural values, and we can make appropriate decisions based on that.
Thank you. Violeta, we're down to just seconds. What would you say?
I think that culture is a framework within which we live, and art is pushing the boundaries of these frameworks. And we need a lot of artists to be included in our collective innovation processes, that we keep broadening the cultural aspects and really get closer to where we want to, what this discussion was all about, and where we want to be closer to nature.
Beautiful. I'm going to ask each of you to say in one sentence, what gives you hope? This is a multi-year tradition from the organization I lead, ecociv.org. And I love to let those short sentences sit in the air, because I think we understand more of your heart and more of your work when we hear that answer, what gives you hope, than perhaps anything else you could say. Let's just do the same four in the opposite order.
Yeah,
In one
it's spring.
sentence.
It's spring.
And let me start with Violeta, then Alexander,
Yeah.
Attila, and then Helena. At the end of the day, Violeta, what gives you hope?
Love.
Alexander.
Yeah. Yes, spring and blossoms.
Oh, beautiful. Attila.
China, and China, the way that China's young children are raised, because in the Western civilization, as Gordon W. Allport wrote, the eye of the Western man sticks out like a stubborn thumb. In other cultures, it blends more readily with nature and with society, and it begins at the age of 3 to 5.
Okay.
So early childhood.
Thank you.
In China, it is in the opposite way around. It respects children much more.
Thank you so much. And Helena, you have the last word. At the end of the day, what gives you hope?
My faith in humanity and the power of nature.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking this brilliant panel for an incredible discussion. Thank you so much. Back to Andrew.
So it's very possible that that was my favorite conversation that I've ever been a part of in my entire life. That was wonderful. Yes, thank you all to all of our panelists for that amazing discussion. I'm so happy that it's recorded and I can revisit that and really think about it some more. We are we're at the end of our first portion of our program and are transitioning to the next. And that transition includes both a break time as well as a musical interlude. We have been trying to feature music and the arts as a way of being included into these conversations, these deep discussions, because we think that's important as well, and creativity and beauty is important. So, Jay McDaniel, is there anything you'd like to say about the band, the Gravel Yard, before we watch their video performance?
Well, I would like to situate it in the context of our conversation.
Cool.
And I'm especially appreciative of the role of the arts and music. So that's the background. And, you know, William Blake talked about seeing heaven in a wildflower and the universe in a grain of sand. And I would like to add that we see creative localization in farmers markets, seed swaps, and locally created music. In my context, in a poor state in the United States, locally created music is often bluegrass. So I asked a bluegrass band from Arkansas to play something for us. And I think, and the band leader can't come because he's teaching elementary school. That's his job. He teaches music at elementary school. So unless he shows up during his break right now, you can picture him singing with 7-year-olds. But here's his band. Andrew?
All right.
So there's your bluegrass for the morning or for the afternoon or the evening or whatever time it is for you. And let me see if the leader of the band happens to be here. I'll just have to call him out. Aaron, are you here? All
I don't
right.
think so.
He's teaching 7-year-olds right now. So anyway, that's creative glocalization through bluegrass music. Peace
Beautiful.
to all.
Thank you so much, Jay. That song is called the Cherokee Shuffle. How fun. So we're now going to transition into the break time. So let's take about 10 minutes or so. Stretch your legs, do what you need to do, and then we'll come back and we'll continue the conversation sort of collectively, right? Sort of more of a working group style. Roll up our sleeves and get to work. See you in 10 minutes.